series, formerly known as the NetBlender Summer Authoring Series. We have had such great success with this throughout the summer that we will be continuing this series throughout the fall. We have quite a large audience today, and thank you all for attending, and we'll go ahead and get started. Our topic today is an introduction to the HDMV authoring module with Dostudio EX. I'm John Harrington. I'm the CEO and founder of NetBlender, and it's a great pleasure once again to be your host for the webinar today. A couple of housekeeping protocol items. As before, you are all muted, so if you have microphones, we can't hear you. So please use the questions chat box that you should see in your control panel to the right of your screen to submit questions. We will try to answer those in real time as best we can. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end, and we will archive the questions and post them in our forum at netblender.ning.com. So let's get started. We're going to cover actually quite a bit today from a high-level view. The HDMV authoring module is a new feature of Dostudio 2.0, and it works hand-in-hand with a new plugin from our blend-in partner, DVD Logic Software. And we're very pleased to see this product come to market. We are bundling the IG editor from DVD Logic with our Dostudio EX package. Today's session will come from the angle of current Dostudio users who are familiar with our BDJ menu interface and building menus within Dostudio, and we'll show you how to essentially construct a disk from a high-level view using our HDMV module. This is not going to be a comprehensive, in-depth treatise on HDMV authoring and getting into the nitty-gritty of all of the command sequences in the session. We also know we have a lot of attendees today who are current users of other authoring tools such as Scenaris BD. For those of you who are using tools like that, obviously you'll find the HDMV structure is familiar to you. The commands are all the same. Everything about our HDMV module is essentially mapped directly to the spec. So we'll spend a couple minutes just talking about the differences between authoring with the built-in Dostudio menu system and authoring with the IG editor, and then we'll actually look at a sample project. Let's just jump right into some of the differences. From a high-level view, the HDMV module can be used for 2D or 3D projects. We are really recommending it primarily, and we've really brought this to market primarily for 3D projects due to the limitation of the PS3 when it updates to 3D capabilities, which is happening momentarily. The PS3 is not actually going to be able to display in 3D mode when BDJ is present. So for any of you who will be working with our 3D solution and mass distributing disks, this HDMV module is really a must. For those of you who are still working primarily in 2D, our built-in core menu system is still a recommended workflow. It is quite a bit faster and more user-friendly, but it's good to know that this can be used for either 2D or 3D projects. As you'll see when we launch the application, look at the sample project, all of your menus are actually created in the IGE editor from DVD Logic Software. The built-in menu system and menu authoring within DSA is not used if you're making a pure HDMV disk. Your playlist and disk structure is all set up in DSA, however. At the end of the session, I will show you how we know, particularly with 3D, a lot of our clients are using our 3D solution to very quickly make dailies and review copies, and it is actually very easy to make a play-only disk in HDMV mode with drag and drop in Dostudio. However, any title that involves any menu complexity, really actually any menu at all, will require some understanding of the Blu-ray spec. And we will post sample projects. We have ample documentation, but the onus is on you, the author, to really understand the how the HDMV structure works on a Blu-ray disc. We'll cover some of that today. Probably the most noticeable difference for those of you who are familiar with Dostudio will really be how, again, how you set up your menus in the plugin, the IG editor plugin, as opposed to within Dostudio, and then how you actually bring these the IG streams into Dostudio. In Dostudio, using the BDJ menu system, as with all Blu-ray discs that are authored with a BDJ menu system, all of your content lives in essentially in playlists that reside within one BDJ title. And for those of you familiar with DSA, you know how that is all set up with drag and drop. And at the top of the screen here, you see a screenshot of what our demo project looks like in the Dostudio BDJ menu title. When creating an HDMV only disc, the IG streams are imported as subpath items and are actually attached to within the playlist to the segments themselves, the path items, when they're added to the playlist. What this allows you to do is actually create multiple IG streams, and this is how this is the common workflow for HDMV authoring. So you would actually set up a separate project in the IG editor for, say, your main menu, and then a separate project for, say, your pop-up menu, and you bring these in discreetly and attach them to the appropriate playlist. Let's talk a little bit about the workflow. It is not dramatically different from the 10,000-foot view than working in DSA with the BDJ menu system. Of course, the first step is always encoding of your audio-video assets, and that is either done with the Dostudio encoder or any other spec-compliant Blu-ray encoder, 2D or 3D. Your assets are then brought into the Dostudio playlist tree, and we'll go through the steps of that in just a moment. And then all of your IG streams are then created with the IG editor as a separate plugin that actually launches as a separate executable. And then the other sort of primary difference is when you're working with DSA and BDJ mode, a lot of the behind-the-scenes BDMV structure is set up for you. You do not actually go in and set up the movie objects by hand. DSA does that for you. When working in the HDMV mode, you are actually in charge of setting up your own movie objects, and that's all done within the playlist structure, playlist tree as well. And then finally, you mux, and in DSA it is always a full compile, because your IG streams are actually are only updated when you do a full mux. So the quick compile feature of DSA, where it just quickly compiles recompiles all of the Java and updates your menus, is not actually available when working in the HDMV module. It is always a full compile and a full mux. In just a moment, we'll take a look at the IG editor. This is a screenshot, and this shows our 3D demo menu in the workspace itself. The important point here is that when working in the IG editor, you are really at the spec level, and we'll go through all of the parts of the IG editor itself. But essentially, you will set up your display set, your pages, and your button object groups. The IG editor does support the Dostudio Photoshop naming convention, so your same PSDs that you have been using can be imported directly into the IG editor, and your menu system will be set up automatically for you. You will add the command sequences directly to the items in the IG editor, and then you output a PES stream. there's a simple export feature, and that is what gets imported into Dostudio. We'll take just a moment here to look at the high-level view of the HDMV organization structure. And as I mentioned before, it is important to have a good sense of how the disks are structured when working with our HDMV module. At the highest level of the disk structure is the index table. This determines the first play and top menu. And yes, in the HDMV mode, you do have access to the top menu, which is not available when working in BDJ. And it determines the titles, the layout of the titles for your overall disk. The next level in the hierarchy are the movie objects. The movie objects contain important terminal information, essentially a bunch of bit flags for features such as resume and title call. And then most importantly, they contain the command sequences that determine essentially the playback and branching of your disk itself. And essentially, movie objects are then associated with titles. The next level down in the hierarchy are your playlists. Now, the setup in Dostudio, the playlist setup is identical whether you're in HDMV mode or BDJ mode. And essentially, your movie objects reference playlists that you have created. And then at the lowest level of the hierarchy are clips. Now, you don't actually in the user interface or in your authoring, you are not actually referencing clips directly with your command sequences. However, the clips contain the actual segment and the path data, both your audio and video paths and your IG streams. Having looked at the structure from the high-level view, this is essentially how the playlist items in DSA map, and they going from sort of top to bottom in the playlist structure. It's sort of reverse order of the hierarchical view. And what we're going to go ahead and do here is actually flip over to DSA. And we'll go through these step by step. So for those of you, again, familiar with DSA, the playlist structure is essentially the same with the addition of a couple of different folders. Your segments, your audio-video segments, these are set up the same as you would normally. This is where you actually bring in your audio and video content as well as your subtitle content. The new item here is this folder called subpath segments. This is actually where you add the IG streams to your playlist. And here in this little demo project that we'll be taking a look at today, I have a main menu IG stream and a pop-up menu IG stream. I've actually added the main menu here. You see it references the PES file that I have exported from the IG editor. And when we actually go through the demo project, we'll add the pop-up menu here so you see the process for adding that. So we have our audio-video segments and our subpath segments. The playlists contain the audio-video segments and the subpath segments themselves. And again, those of you who have been working with Dostudio know that you can create playlists directly from your audio-video segments or add them to existing segments or add them simply with drag and drop. The subpath segments are then associated with the path items in your playlist via drag and drop. When you're working in Dostudio, the BDJ menu system, there's very little setup that you actually do down here in the title title structure. Essentially, you add all of your playlists to your single BDJ title, and really the only setup item that you need to be concerned with is if you want to place any of the playlists before the loading screen. In when working in HDMV mode, you actually disable the BDJ menu, and none of this is executed. There's no loading screen because there's no BDJ loading. And you actually add titles and movie objects. And again, as I mentioned, the movie objects contain terminal information that can be found here in the lower left part of the movie object editor, and your command sequences here for navigation and other types of authoring commands. And then finally, looking at the titles, if you are going to create a simple play-only disk, actually all you have to do is take one of your playlists and drag it down into the title itself. If you are actually authoring a disk with the IG editor and menus and navigation, then what you do is you simply reference the movie objects to associate them with the title, and each movie object has a unique ID, movie object 0, movie object 1, and then you associate those with the titles here. So that's a high-level view of the playlist structure. And now let's actually take a look at the IG editor. Okay. And the IG editor is a plug-in program. It's a separate application. As you see, it can be launched directly from DSA, or it can be launched on its own. We'll come back and look at a few slides on the PSD importing. But for starters, let me grab a highlighter here. Let's look at some of the basic features here of the IG editor. This section here on screen contains essentially your content, your display set, any menu pages that you have in your menu, and then your button object groups. For those of you again familiar with Dostudio and the menu convention in Dostudio, there's a rough analogy between the menu blocks in Dostudio and pages in the IG stream. The one primary difference is that unlike the BDJ menus, where each menu block can be turned on and off discretely, and multiple menu blocks can be visible on screen at any one time, excuse me, in HDMV authoring, each page is only one page is visible at any one time. And so, in the case of this very simple demo menu that we're working with today, essentially any of your graphics, say here in the main menu area, would also be included inside of, say, your chapters menu page. So all of those same buttons go inside of, essentially redundantly inside of each page. So there's no discrete turning on and off of menu blocks as you have with the BDJ menu system. Obviously, we have a preview window here that is scalable. Turn this up to 100%. And there is a control panel of sorts located in this part of the screen. And this is where essentially the display information, such as the location on the screen, as well as the remote control navigation, is set. So in this case, let me bounce back out here so we can see a little bit more of the menu system. So our play film, for example, on the right button, we want it to go to the chapters button. When I select the chapters button, the right button takes you to audio setup, the left button takes you back to play film. All of this is set manually in the IG editor. And then probably most importantly, in the upper right hand part of the screen here is where you actually add your command sequences. We have some documentation that is available that lists essentially all of the basic navigation commands, and we'll make this sample project available as well. But essentially, when you're adding commands to a button. You enter them here. Let's actually remove this one. The IG editor will check your syntax in real time. In this case, I haven't actually entered a parameter yet, so it's telling me jump title must have one argument, and it's not there, so I'm going to get my number in. And once the syntax is correct, you're notified in real time. Once you have added your commands, you compile the commands, and when you're ready to actually either add the IG stream to Dostudio for the first time, or anytime you've made an update, you would actually export the PES file once again. We'll call this one main menu. And I don't need to actually go back and re-import it. Just anytime I mux, Dostudio will reference that PES file that I have created. Let's bounce back over to the slides and talk a little bit about the Photoshop importing. When importing Photoshop files into the IG editor, you do not use Mosaic. Mosaic, again, is the built-in Photoshop importer for Dostudio that creates the BDJ menus. The IG editor supports Photoshop importing directly. A point I should actually make is that the IG editor can import both the Mosaic, Dostudio Mosaic naming convention, as well as the Cineris Designer convention. It can also import IES streams that are exported from Cineris or demuxed with a tool such as BD to Dostudio, all available from DVD Logic. So we know a lot of our customers are essentially reauthoring discs for foreign territories that are either coming out of Hollywood or coming out of just other territories, and those other tools from DVD Logic are quite useful to really increase your workflow. You can essentially deconstruct a disk very quickly, and now with this, with the IG editor, re-import the interactive streams and cut your authoring time down to a matter of hours instead of a matter of days. But back to the PSD importing, it can accept the same Dostudio naming convention. So at the menu block level, the MB colon in the name of the menu is supported. Each menu block that would create a separate menu block in the BDJ menu system becomes a page in the IG editor. The same naming convention applies for the button states, N colon for normal state, S colon for selected state, and A colon for the activated state. Each button becomes a button object group. The IG editor does actually support more than the 3 image states. Actually supports the 32 images for the button object group. Those cannot be imported directly with the Dostudio Mosaic naming convention. However, they can be added after the fact. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, for those of you who have been working with Dostudio and are used to being able to turn menu blocks on and off discreetly and have multiple menu blocks on screen at the same time, the one difference the one change you need to make in your Photoshop layout would be to actually create essentially redundant button sets for each page if your menu system is going to build upon itself. I have a few screenshots here to further flush out what the naming convention looks like. So in this little small sample project, we have essentially a main menu page with a play film, a chapters, and an audio setup button. As you'll see at this layer, we have a layer that's MB colon main menu, menu block colon main menu. In the BDJ, that would Dostudio BDJ, that would import as a separate menu block. And in the IG editor, it comes in as a page. Within the folder set that contains the buttons, we have the 3 buttons, 1 layer for each: normal state, selected state, activated state. Those are all processed by the IG editor to create a single button object group. In Photoshop, if we then selected our chapters page, which you see here, MB:chapters designates an additional page, and then inside the folder set we have not only the chapters buttons, but we have the additional graphics that that would be included so that we keep our essentially our main menu graphics on screen at the same time. Okay. And then finally, for those of you who are familiar with HDMV authoring, again, all of the commands are exactly the same. For those of you who have been using Dostudio, the actions that can be essentially assigned with pull-down menu ease, there are many analogous commands that you use, but all the commands are essentially entered by hand. And we provide full documentation, but the command categories break down roughly into 3 main categories: branching commands, compare commands, and set commands. The branch commands are some of the most fundamental navigation commands: jump title, jump object, call title, call object. Jump commands essentially kill the current object and branch you to a new one. The call commands allow you to resume back to the same point in the object that you have left from. Resume, go to. We'll provide full documentation of all the commands, and you'll see some of them in action in the sample project. The compare commands are essentially equal, not equal, less than, greater than, bitwise compare features, generally used for checking your parameters. And then the set commands perform arithmetic operations, bitwise operations, and importantly the set system operations, such as setting visibility of various pages within your menu set. I don't mean to be drawing polka dots on the screen, but my GoToMeeting seems to have left me in highlighter mode. So you may see a lot of highlights here in the next few minutes. Okay, so let's actually take a look at our sample project. And I really do need to get out of my highlighter mode. So stand by just for one moment. There we go. Okay. Great. So our sample project that we're working on is a very, very simple 2-page project. We're looking at it here in the IG editor. What we're going to do, we have a menu loop and a main video, and in this case I'm actually using our same assets that we use with the Dostudio demo project that we make available. Again, we will primarily be recommending the use of this for 3D projects. This demo will be a 2D project for ease of distribution of the assets. Essentially the only difference with 3D would be creating 3D segments in Dostudio rather than 2D segments themselves. So my first step here, I would have imported my Photoshop file that is in Dostudio naming convention, just like we saw in the slides. And when that's pulled in, I have a main menu page and a chapters page. Bouncing back over to Dostudio, we've taken a look at the playlist structure. What I'm actually going to do is read my screen layout just a little bit. Since we will not be making use of, as you see, this is all blank. You will not actually see your menu system in the Dostudio layout preview or layout editor, since all of it will actually be visible in the IG editor. So I'm just going to expand my control panel so I have a little more room to work. I've added my two segments, my menu loop and my main video. I've imported my main menu PES file. I have not yet imported my pop-up menu PES file. I've created a playlist for my menu loop, and I see that this playlist is numbered 1000. Dostudio will automatically number your playlist starting at 1000 every time you add one. And I've created a second playlist for my main video that you see is playlist number 1001. I have disabled the DSA BDJ menu title. And let's spend a few minutes in the Blu-ray disc title section of the playlist. A few minutes ago when we were looking at the basic diagram, we talked about the index table that really determines the basic layout structure, including your first play title and your top menu title. This is where you would set what title you want to play first on disk startup. This is a very simple demo project, so we'll just want it to play the menu loop. If you had an FBI warning or perhaps some other studio type logos and so forth, those might be your first play. But here I've selected menu loop. And then I select my top menu title, and this is what will play when the user presses the top menu button on the remote control. Again, being a very simple demo project here, both of these will be set to the menu loop. But again, if I had an FBI warning or an inter warning or something, that might likely be my first play title, and then my top menu title would be the menu loop itself. I've actually added two titles, one for each of our primary video areas, the main menu loop and the main video. And this very simple title only contains two movie objects. One for the that sets up the loop for the main menu, and one that actually plays our main video and then returns playback to the menu loop upon completion. We can look very quickly at how this is set up. Again, for those of you coming from the point and click of the Dostudio actions, this will look a little foreign, but don't be afraid. It's actually a very small set of commands that you actually need to know in order to set up the bulk of your navigation. What you see here is actually we're setting up a label that gives us a section in the command sequence that is identified, essentially the top. We have a play playlist command, play PL, and that is referencing playlist 1000. Look over here, we'll see that our menu loop is in fact playlist 1000, including our main menu IG stream. And then at the end of the at the conclusion of playing the playlist, we want it to loop, and it goes back to label 0. And this essentially creates a looping structure that will keep the main menu loop playing on screen until there's some intervention by the viewer. An intervention by the viewer would take place in the form of pressing a button on the menu that we will look at very shortly. Our second movie object contains a play playlist at marker command, which is essentially playing a playlist and jumping to a specific chapter. This playlist is it's referencing playlist 1001, which we can see here is our main video. And you'll see that the play playlist at marker command has two parameters to set. One is the playlist and one is the number of the marker. Now I could set this if we wanted it to always start at marker 0, essentially at the first marker that would be 0. We're actually using a TPRM. We've arbitrarily for this demo project picked as number 10. Whatever value is in number 10 will be the number of the marker that is played. and that is actually set by our menu system. And then at the conclusion of playing it, it jumps to Title 1, which happens to be our menu loop, which you see has an ID of 1. Let's jump over to the IG editor and look at how we author the menu itself. In our main menu, first of all, an important parameter is whether it's the graphics are always on or pop up. For our main menu, they will be always on. That means that the graphics will be displayed on screen anytime that is playing. We've set our display size to match the size of our video and frame rate information. Jumping into the page itself, we can set a default active button. In this case, we've picked our play film button, being the first button on the left-hand side. This can also be set to be dynamic, so that you could set dynamically set which button is selected. And then we'll go through each of our buttons here. For play film, we actually need to add a command. Since our Title 2, that movie object references a playlist at marker, and it's looking for a value, and it needs to know which marker to start playback from. So we're going to set a value in that GPRM of 0. That sets so that the GPRM 10 will have a marker value of 0, and then we jump to Title 2 whenever that play film button is played. And looking back at what that movie object setup looks like, then it will play playlist 1001, and it would jump to whatever marker is contained there, which currently is 0. Essentially, it will play from the beginning. Our chapters button, let me expand this, is using, if you recall, there are the three sort of main categories of commands. This is using a set command. And this is actually setting the page. This is actually, when you press the chapters button, is actually going to change the page from page 0. You see here that our main menu page has a value of 0 to button page number 1. Excuse me, page number 1. And you'll see our chapters page has an ID of 1. So whenever that chapters button is pressed, then the view will switch from page 1, excuse me, page 0 to page 1. If we expand these, we'll see that each of our chapters has moves a value into our GPRM and then jumps to Title 2. So Chapter 1 is essentially marker 0, the first marker in the playlist. Chapter 2 jumps to marker number 1, which is the second chapter in the playlist. And Chapter 3 sets the value to marker 2, which is the third chapter in the playlist, and then jumps the title. HDMV authoring is declarative in the sense that it is everything is executed in a linear fashion, and branching occurs when the command sequences then executes a branch command, such as a jump, call, go to, etc. And a final feature of this very simple menu is getting back. If we would like the user, when they arrow down, to go back to be able to navigate at the main menu level there, the play film, chapters, and audio setup. Now in Dostudio's BDJ menu, you can attach commands to the up, down, left, right buttons on the remote control. Here what we do is we set up essentially a dummy button. There's no video, there's no graphic associated with this button. And this button has a command associated with it to set the page back to back to the original page, which, do I have the ID correct? Oh, it should be 0 actually. Let's go ahead and change that. So that will actually set visibility back to the main menu page. We want this to happen as soon as the button is highlighted, so we set the auto action flag to true. All of our other buttons have had the auto action flag set to false, meaning nothing will happen until the user hits the enter key. If the auto action flag is set to true, then whatever command is associated with that button will happen as soon as that button receives focus. And so since we've made that change, we'll go ahead and compile. Tells us that the compile was successful. If there were any errors or warnings, we'd be notified in the lower right-hand part of the screen. We'll go ahead and save this and re-export our PES file. Close this. Finally, just to show you the process for importing an IG stream. And actually, before I get to that, I see that there's a question saying, I didn't see your invisible button on your PSD. That's correct. I actually added that button by hand, and let me relaunch the IG editor here to show you that. Let's see this here. So you're correct. This button was not actually part of the PSD, and what I did, I just right-clicked and I added a button object group. So after import, you can still make edits to your menu system. And as I mentioned, the Mosaic naming convention doesn't support, only supports the 3 button states. If you were to add additional images into your button object groups, you would do that manually. Okay, so let's actually then create our pop-up menu. As you see here, I've added the subpath segment, but I have not yet actually associated an HDMV menu with it. So we need to go and create that. I'm going to actually show you here. Get out of this. I've been launching the IG editor from directly within Dostudio. It can also be launched separately as its own application. And what I'm going to do is actually import an additional PSD. See the progress bar in the lower left-hand corner. Now again, this is a very, very simple pop-up menu, and is actually designed, quite deliberately to look very, very different from our main menu, so that you can see, visually that, very obviously that the pop-up menu is different graphically and will be different in behavior. This is actually going to be a pop-up, meaning it will not be on screen when the title starts playing, or when that segment is actually played, and will be accessible via the pop-up menu button. We'll go ahead and set some of these, set our frame rate to match. And here I'll go ahead and set up the default button will be our chapter 1. Now we can also set parameters to check what chapter is playing, and we will get into some of those types of authoring details in future webinars. And we're going to go ahead and set up a discussion group area in our forum for HDMV authoring, where users can share their experience and hopefully share sample code and so forth. Now I won't go through setting this this entire IG stream up completely. As you can imagine, the commands for these chapter buttons would be very similar to the commands that we'd see in our main menu. We're going to go ahead and save this as our pop-up. and we'll export the PES file here as pop-up. Dostudio. I'll actually go and import that PES file. Setting the language is optional. I'll go ahead and set this to English. You can, in fact, actually have multiple IG streams added to the subpath segment, and actually they can be called then based on the language. And of course, renaming it is optional as well, but we'll go ahead and call that pop-up. And then what we're going to want to do is add this to our main video. So I simply drag it over. And I've now added a new IG stream to our main video segment that is playing in the main video playlist, which, to finish out the logical thought structure, is being referenced by movie object number 1 right here. Movie object number 1 is associated with title number 2 on our disk. In order to actually view this then, I would actually go ahead and hit compile. And as I mentioned earlier, the quick compile button, the quick compile feature of DSA is not operational in HDMV mode. It is always a full compile. And everything else is the same as far as viewing. You can view your compiled disk in, say, a soft player such as ArcSoft Total Media Theater that is able to play your BDMV folder directly off the hard drive. Burning is identical, and when you are ready to send your disk off for replication, the formatting process is identical. So that concludes today's presentation. Again, a very high-level view of how the HDMV module works and how it interacts with the IG editor plugin from DVD Logic. And what we'll do, we'll just open this up to questions. We will keep the chat box open. And as always, thank you for your attendance. Next week we will actually be holding an expert series webinar, but we will 2 weeks from today, and we will be publishing a schedule throughout the fall this week. So we look forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks' time.